What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Fantasy Pros. This is Leading Off Live, the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Orrico, joined by a special guest today. We have Chris Towers in the house, host of CBS's Fantasy Baseball Today podcast, along with the great Frank Stample and Scott White. Chris, it is great to have you on here. I was just thinking about it before. We haven't done a pod together in a while. We got to hang out a little bit in Arizona last year, but it's great to see you, man. How you doing?
Doing well. We got the last week of the season. We were talking before the show. It'll be nice to relax a little bit. Hope you're doing First Pitch Arizona this year as well. I'll be out there, so looking forward to it.
Absolutely. I'm going to be there. I know I'm going to be on the Sleeper in the Bus with Justin and Paul and Jason. I do that show usually once a week these days. And then I think we're still talking about a Fantasy Pros podcast down there, still in the works. But yes, absolutely, we'll be down there. If you guys haven't checked it out already, Baseball HQ does a great fantasy baseball event every November down in Arizona. So make sure you guys are checking that out. Fill up the chat with your questions. I know it's the end of the year and maybe your season's done. Maybe your head-to-head leagues are done. But if you're in Roto or you just want to shoot the breeze, throw your questions into the chat. We'll be happy to answer them here on this lovely Monday. We only have 3 more shows left for the season. Today with myself and Chris. Wednesday it'll be myself and Casey Bubba. And then Friday, Chris Welsh, Joe Orrico, Joe Pizzapia. All 3 of the hosts on the final show of the year, which should be a lot of fun. But I did want to start off with probably the most controversial topic in baseball these days. It's the American League MVP award. I don't know that I really care so much, but I see people on both sides of the argument saying that the other side is very stupid. It's obviously Cal Raleigh. It's obviously Aaron Judge. For me, it's not really obviously either one of them at this point. I wouldn't have a problem with it going really either way, Chris, but we haven't talked in a while. I figured I would just see where you're at on this whole discussion.
Yeah, the only incorrect opinion you can have about American League MVP is that it should be someone who isn't Cal Raleigh or Aaron Judge. Otherwise, I have no strong take. Aaron Judge is at that level that Mike Trout was at in the 2010s, right? Where it requires someone doing something absolutely historic for him to not win the MVP. Well, there is a catcher who's pretty good defensively who has 58 homers with a week left in the season. That is a pretty historic performance. And so, yeah, the idea that there is a wrong choice between the two of them, I think is ridiculous. We've got 6 games left for both. That might be what decides it, actually. That is how narrow the margins we're operating at here. And you might look at, I know Baseball Reference, there's a 2 WAR difference between them on Baseball Reference. In that specific instance, they're not counting framing stats on their metrics, and so you're not going to get the accurate take. And if you think framing stats are overstating impact, I'm open to that idea, although it's a lot of different people have independently come to the conclusion that framing is super important and matters a lot. So Fangraphs WAR accounts for framing. There is a 0.4 WAR difference between the two of them. For all intents and purposes, that's a tie. And so this is one of those years. It's the same with the really good Ohtani Judge year where there is no wrong answer. It's one of them has to win and one of them has to be second. It doesn't mean the guy who finishes in second doesn't deserve it. Now, personally, because I like trolling New York sports fans, I think the funnier outcome is Cal Raleigh wins it. But that is not an earnest opinion that I hold. That is just me being a jerk. Aaron Judge, I never thought we would see a player, at least this quickly after Mike Trout, who was as good as Mike Trout. And Aaron Judge is absolutely at that level. He is operating at a level where Barry Bonds, Ted Williams, Mickey Mantle, that's the kind of company he has to keep. But Mookie Betts won an MVP ahead of Mike Trout and deserved it. That happened too. So it's not just voter fatigue or whatever. Cal Raleigh is just having an incredible season and absolutely deserves to be in this discussion. It might end up being Judge. I would have no problem with that. It might end up being Raleigh. I would have no problem with that.
I'm in the same boat. As a Blue Jay fan, I have no problem ribbing Yankee fans or New Yorkers. No problem at all. But I honestly, looking at it, Judge is going to have, he's at 49. He's going to have 51, 52 homers. a 200 WRC plus. He's essentially equivalent to 2 players offensively. He's not playing a bad right field. But then Raleigh doing what he's doing behind the dish, I think you can make a good argument. This is the best season ever from a catcher. It's on the Mount Rushmore of catcher seasons. And I have no problem with it going to Cal Raleigh. Now, in the chat, Brandon said, curious if the Mariners not making the postseason can have an impact. The Mariners continue hot for the last week and win the American League West, and the Yankees, end up in the wild card spot. I feel like that could definitely factor in. Like you talked about, Chris, they're so close. The WAR is close. Everything is close. So it could be those soft factors that do come into it, where the team ranks. It shouldn't really, if one team has 90 wins, one team has 89 wins, it shouldn't really matter. But voters will look at those other little factors as well. So it's an interesting conversation for sure. I don't really have a strong feel, though. If it goes to either one of them, I'm not going to be upset about it. It's kind of like, a couple years ago, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. had that 48 home run season. As a Blue Jay fan, I'm thinking he should be the MVP, but Ohtani that year, I don't have any problem with it either. They were both MVP worthy seasons. One was just slightly better, and the voters will have to decide that again this year. But I don't really have a strong opinion either way at the end of the day.
Yeah, somebody has to win, right? Like the person winning is not an indictment on the person who lost. It's just like it should be. I don't know. Are there 60 MVP voters, 30 MVP voters? I think it's 30. Yeah. It should be 16-14 one way or the other.
Yes, I think it will be. Yeah. And it could even be 15-15 and come down to who has more second place votes or something. Yeah. We've seen some crazy races, so it should be fun to follow over the final week. If Raleigh hits that 60 number, a lot of people have talked about that magic 60 number. It shouldn't really do anything if it's 59 versus 60, but again, it's those little soft factors, the round numbers that people really like to focus in on.
We have 10 fingers, and that makes us love a 0 number,
Yeah, I think that probably is all it comes down to. What have you been making of the recent playoff races that we've seen, Chris? It's been a kind of wild week with the Reds and the Mets, the Guardians and the Tigers, the Mariners and the Astros. There's been a lot of movement that I didn't really expect to see here over the final week. Are the Mets at this point going to miss the playoffs, you think?
So I remember looking at this last week, and I was looking at the Fangraphs playoff odds, and the Mets had like a 90% chance of making the playoffs, which seemed odd to me because the Reds were 2 games back at that point and had the tiebreaker. So I was like, well, how does that make sense? They're 2 games is not nothing, but clearly they've made it up already. They have the tiebreaker. I think at this point, the Reds certainly have the better pitching than the Mets. I actually don't think that one's particularly close at this point, which is kind of shocking how the season started. The Mets have been like a bottom 5 team in baseball since like the end of June. Yeah. So it's not, even looking at their team coming into the season, I know they had the, after tax $450 million payroll or whatever, and they signed Juan Soto, and that was a huge deal. But you looked at the roster, and it's like, this is not, one of the 2 best teams in baseball. They still had some work to do. And so I'm not terribly surprised. It's been a shocking collapse just in how good they were early on, but they made some moves in the bullpen that have really not paid off. Ryan Helsley has been a disaster for them. Edwin Diaz is kind of their only good reliever right now. If it wasn't for, they've become one of the best pitching dev organizations in baseball, and if it wasn't for that, they'd be truly lost, because how many of their non-rookie pitchers do you trust right now? I don't think it's any of them. So it's a really tough spot for the Mets to be in, and I would say at this point the Reds are favored. Yeah, it's basically a coin flip one way or the other. Obviously they're tied, but I don't know if I would bet on the Mets to make the playoffs at this point. And it really is amazing because I think 3 weeks ago, it looked like there was going to be no drama down the stretch. Like all the drama was going to be in the seeding. The Guardians were like 8 games back a month ago or something. Like the Tigers have completely collapsed. The Guardians can't stop winning. It's been much more fun than I expected it to be. And hey, I'm a Marlins fan. Technically, the Marlins are playing for something in the final week of the season. Who would have seen that coming? They're 4 games back with like 5 teams between them, but still, we've got something to play for.
It's been a lot of fun, and I agree. Like a few weeks ago, I thought every race was essentially sealed. Maybe you'd see one team sneak in, but I thought, 2-3 weeks ago, every team that was in a playoff spot at that point was like 85+% to make it on FanGraphs. And it seemed like we were pretty much solidified in the teams we were going to be seeing at that point. With the Mets, things have been clicking at different times this year. Earlier on in the season, Clay Holmes was pitching well. David Peterson, Tyler McGill before he got hurt was pitching well. And then that pitching kind of went away. The offense at certain points in the season was absolutely on fire, but nothing was ever working at the same time. So I don't know if things are going to click in the final week of the season. The way that baseball works, the Mets could still win the World Series this year.
Absolutely.
But it's really looking kind of grim right now. Cincinnati's been amazing, but Seattle has been, I think, I don't know if Seattle or Cleveland the last week has been more impressive, honestly, because Cleveland, I look at like 3-week rolling stats all the time for just offensive stats for a lot of things. I look at the 3-week sample size, and every 3-week sample size, pretty much the whole season, Cleveland had the worst or the second worst offense in baseball. And now they've won, I think it's 9 of 10 or something like that, something ridiculous. Are the Tigers in trouble here?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't. The Guardians are one where I don't quite get how they're doing this. I guess like Logan Allen's had a couple good starts in a row. Tanner Bybee finally showing up the last couple of weeks. Gavin Williams. This feels like the biggest fraud in baseball to me. Gavin Williams' success. He has like something like a 2.70 ERA since the start of June, with like a 4.20 FIP. He's got like the 10th or 13th worst K- walk ratio in baseball in that span, and somehow he just keeps doing it. It's like exactly 5 innings and 1 or 0 runs every time out. I have zero faith in it. For 2026, I'm going to be completely out on Gavin Williams if people are drafting him as like a top 30 SP. I don't know where we're going to get on that one, but I can't quite make sense of Cleveland and this run that they're on. But that is also one of the beautiful things about baseball, that just these unexpected things can happen where even if you follow baseball closely and even if you look at the team and see what they're doing, you can't quite make sense of how it's happening, except that their pitching got hot at the right time. They've always had a great bullpen, and they have just enough around Jose Ramirez. I would say actually they do not have enough around Jose Ramirez, but when the pitching is going like it has been, I guess they have enough around Jose Ramirez to get it done. But the Mariners, red hot, sweeping the Astros, seems like they've pretty much locked in their playoff spot. That's a fascinating one, just because the pitching hasn't quite been there in the way we expected. Like Logan Gilbert's been fine, but I think a little disappointing. George Kirby's obviously struggled coming back from the shoulder injury in a lot of ways, but he's coming off one of his best starts of the season. And then we've got this Brian Wu injury where I hope it's not serious. Brian Wu is maybe my favorite pitcher in baseball at this point. I love watching him pitch. I think it's, Saris has made the comp to Zach Wheeler, and that's how I feel watching Brian Wu pitch, where he's got the whole arsenal, but the fastballs are so good that he kind of doesn't need it, which I think is such a fun way to pitch in this era where everybody's going away from their fastballs and he's throwing 75% fastballs. But he can get away with it because those pitchers are so good. So I hope he's good for the playoffs. Brian Wu should be the Mariners' game 1 starter if they make the playoffs and he's good. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good problem for them to have. Oh, well, he's not. Well, we have to throw Logan Gilbert in game 1. Oh, shoot. Well, like they got a lot of good going on in that rotation, even with some of the disappointments. Like we mentioned, Gilbert's not doing as well as we thought. Luis Castillo, I'm not really interested in him anymore. Bryce Miller has been a disaster, but still, in the playoffs, you got 3 working arms. You're pretty all right. Maybe you sneak in a 4th there. Maybe you can trust Castillo in a game 4 situation. But
that's where the Reds are kind of a team that you do not want to face, and it kind of happened overnight where this suddenly became, when Hunter Green is healthy and pitching the way he's capable of, that is, I think, one of the 5 best pitchers in baseball right now. It's a question of whether he can stay healthy. I have no idea what to do about him for fantasy in 2026 because he has, I don't think, made it through a whole season healthy ever as a professional, maybe one time in the minors. but just the level that Hunter Green is pitching at, it seems like he's one-upping himself every time he goes out there. And then you've got Lodolo and Abbott and Chase Burns as a multi-inning arm out of the bullpen. I think Chase Burns could be one of the best pitchers in baseball as soon as next year. So the Reds are sneaky fun, and it would be nice if they actually did manage to make the playoffs, because it's been a while since they've been that competitive.
I think it'd be a lot of fun. Do a solid for Jeff Erickson. He's been cheering on some rough teams for a while out there in Cincinnati. He could use a break. But guys, before we keep going, I want to remind you that we are giving away the signed Billy Wagner baseball, courtesy of our friends over at pristineauction.com. All you have to do to enter is subscribe to our YouTube channel, FantasyPros MLB. You do it right now. Drop a comment below on any video, and that's it. We'll be announcing the lucky winner right here on the channel later this month, so make sure to turn on those notifications so you can know when new videos are up and to claim your prize. Look at that baseball. Signed Billy Wagner, now a Hall of Famer.
Hall of Famer.
Hall of Fame, Billy Wagner signed baseball, so make sure you guys are dropping your comments and getting access to that. Somebody in the chat saying, can Billy Wagner pitch for the Mets tomorrow? I'm sure they would like it. I am sure they would like it. Let's take a couple of questions here. There was a couple of interesting ones, and this kind of goes a little bit to what we were just talking about a minute ago. I know there's an obvious top 3 starting pitchers for 2026, Skubal, Skeens, Crochet. I completely agree. Order them however you like. I don't have a big problem, however you put it. Is Logan Gilbert the obvious 4th? Paul Sporer and I got into a fight about a week ago about this. I think there are like 5 to 7 names that could viably be the 4th pitcher off the board. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Hunter Brown, Chris Sanchez. I mean, maybe even Chris Sale. Logan Gilbert is in that conversation. If Strider finishes with another good start, people are going to be, well, maybe Strider. So there's a lot of options for that number 4 SP. Chris, do you have a hard line on this one right now, or is it just too early to tell for you?
I'm leaning Chris Sale.
Okay.
And I think that will be somewhat controversial because he's missed a lot of time. He's going to be 37 at the start of next season, I believe. But the way I look at it is this. If you line up all those guys, Sanchez just doesn't really have the strikeouts. Like, he's a good strikeout pitcher, but it's a step back from, Chris Sale, certainly. Yeah. Kind of the same thing with Hunter Brown, where it's good strikeout rate, but not elite. Those guys have pretty good bills of health, though. I think the biggest knock on Gilbert, certainly missed time this year with a forearm/elbow injury. Chris Sale has missed a lot of time. Yoshinobu Yamamoto had the shoulder injury last year. And just Yamamoto, he doesn't have the innings. I think he's like 25th or something in innings this season. They're going to be in a 6-man rotation. It just, when you're operating at that level, I think those small-scale differences are enough to knock him off as good as he is. And so I look at Chris Sale, and man, the skill set is still 100% intact. Maybe not quite to the level it was in like 2019 when he was like 13.5 K per 9, but I mean, you're talking about one of the best strikeout pitchers in baseball, 2.30-something ERA since the start of last season, elite whip. He's missed a lot of time, but then you start looking at what he's missed time with, and it was like the last few years. This year was the fractured rib, making a diving play in a 5-0 game in the 9th inning. I don't really hold that against him. I think he had a stress reaction in his other rib a couple years ago. He fell off a bike and broke his wrist. He got hit by a comebacker and broke his pinky. It's mostly been, since he came back from Tommy John surgery, it's mostly been pretty random, bad luck type injuries. The type of injuries that I just don't really think you should hold against him. Certainly not in the way that I hold Logan Gilbert having an elbow injury against him. So I think if you're just talking skill, Logan Gilbert's probably the answer. The gains he's made as a strikeout pitcher over the past couple of seasons are absurd. He has, I think, the 2nd or 3rd highest whiff rate among starters this season. His splitter is absolutely one of the best put-away pitches in baseball. It's a pitch that was not nearly that good for him a couple of years ago. It's just, how much should I ding him for the elbow injury this year? It's been a very good run of health otherwise. I think he's in that discussion. I'm leaning Chris Sale, though. That's going to be controversial, and I agree. I think it's wide open. 4 through 12. I think there should be 3 pitchers drafted in like the first 15 picks. Yeah. There probably shouldn't be another one for like 25 or 30 picks. I think this should be the year that we say, that second tier is wide open. Let's not push them up too far. Whether we actually do that is a different question, but I think that second tier is completely wide open.
I really do as well. I agree with just about everything you said there. I think Sale, if he's going healthy into 2026, if we turn the calendar and there's no question about his health, he's looking good, he's looking strong, I think that he is number 4, or at least very close in that conversation. For me, though, after 3, with Sale, Gilbert, Joe Ryan, Hunter Brown, Yamamoto, Sanchez, DeGrom, Peralta, Green, Wu, there's just so many names. Yep. I feel like I almost just want to wait. Let somebody else take them in the 3rd or 4th, and whoever's left for me there, maybe in like the 5th round or something, I'll take them. I feel like that's kind of where I'm headed right now. Pitching really depends on what site you're playing on, the depth of the league. The prices can vary a lot, especially once you get auctions into the mix. Like there can be a wide variety of pitching prices. But I feel like just waiting until taking somebody at the end of that second tier next year. Maybe if you want to take like a Skubal in the 1st round, wait, and then Joe Ryan SP2 in the 5th round or something like that. I don't know that I want to be taking the top of that second tier necessarily when I feel like it's pretty flat between maybe 4 and 15, 4 and 14, something like that on the list. Chris Towers is wonderful. I agree, Gregory. I agree. Chris is fantastic. Make sure you guys are following him. Not really on the Twitter streets that much these days. Check him out on Blue Sky. I believe the @ is at cptowers.bsky.social. So make sure you guys are checking that out. And I'll link it into the description of the episode as well, so you guys can click on that one and find it there. Daily League, should I use Ohtani as a hitter or a pitcher at Arizona on Tuesday?
I mean, we know he's limited to 5 innings. We knew that. Dave Roberts said that back in July, but I think everybody got a forceful reminder when he was pulled in the middle of a no-hitter last week. But that is the max. It doesn't, if he throws 60 pitches in 5 innings, he's gone. I think in a daily league you still go with the pitcher though.
Yeah, I think so too.
In a weekly league, you're almost never using him as a pitcher, so you might as well take the opportunity to use him here.
Yeah, in weekly leagues, there might be 1 week in the season, maybe if he has 2 starts, where you're like, and this was not the year for that. Maybe next year you see Ohtani's got 2 starts. You need the help. You need to catch up on the pitching stats. For one day, I don't mind going to Ohtani there. Like in that type of situation, he's such a cheat code. You put him in the pitching slot for one day, you put him in the hitting spots the rest of the week, you're still probably getting like 100 points or something close to it from Mr. Ohtani here. Pick keepers for next year. I don't have to keep 5, but can enter draft and get a good player that isn't kept. Mookie at shortstop only. Seager, Ohtani, Soto, Jordan, Tucker, and Snell. That is a haul of names. I don't have to keep 5. So, I mean, you're keeping Ohtani and Soto. You're keeping Tucker, I think. That's where it gets a little bit complicated for me.
I'm really interested to see what Jordan Alvarez's price looks like in 2026 because before the ankle injury, I was kind of willing to just completely give him the mulligan for this because it was just a hand injury that got misdiagnosed. And I know the Astros have a tendency of misdiagnosing injuries lately, but typically that's not something that you would expect to be a recurring injury, typically not something that you would expect to linger. Now he's got this ankle injury. Obviously, lower body injuries have been the problem for Jordan Alvarez throughout his career. Mostly it's been the knees. I still think this is a guy who, we talk about like guys having historic seasons to challenge Aaron Judge for MVP. Jordan is still one of those guys I can see having a random year where he hits 50 homers and hits 325 and is in that MVP discussion. I think he's, one of the 10 best hitters in baseball, let's say. Might be 5, might be 12, whatever it is. The injuries are a big concern here. I haven't done my rankings yet for 2026. I would still think I'm going to rank him in the top 4 rounds. Maybe it's not a second round pick. You discount it, but a 3rd or 4th round, that still seems viable to me. So I would guess in this format, and especially in the ESPN points league where you lose a lot of points for bad plate discipline, where Jordan Alvarez has incredible plate discipline. So I still think he's probably in this discussion. I don't know about Mookie or Seager. And Snell, I am more likely to draft Blake Snell this year than last year because I thought last year he was a top 8 SP and ADP, and I just thought that was crazy. We know the deal with Blake Snell. He's gonna look amazing for some stretch. He's not gonna throw a lot of innings. I could not make sense of his price coming into this season. I'm more likely to buy it now that I would guess it's gonna dip to like SP 20 or something. But even then, I don't really think he's in that first 5 rounds discussion. Mookie has bounced back in a nice way in the second half, but I still think 5th round is right around where I would guess he ends up, and that's not a screaming value. Same with Seager. It's just I don't hold him having an appendectomy against him, right? Like that could happen. That happened to me when I was 12. You know, I hope nobody holds that against me. But it's just one of those situations where it's always something. I think he is like 32 or 33, so he's older. I think he should get pushed down. So I would go with Ohtani, Soto, Yordan, and Tucker. And I'm not sure I would keep any of the other ones in this format.
I think I'm probably with you there. In the chat, Fenway Cheap Seats saying, going to be hard for me to trust any Astros given the way they have mishandled injuries. Is that going to factor into your evaluations at all this year?
What's the quote? If I had a nickel for every time the Astros mishandled a superstar injury, I would have 2 nickels, which isn't that much, but it's weird. It's happened twice. Like, I don't know if it happening twice should be enough to like just ding the whole team.
Yeah.
But it is alarming that it happened to their best player 2 summers in a row. And it was like the exact same situation where like, it's fine. He's going to miss a couple days, but it's totally fine. It's just a bruise. And it's like, oh no, he fractured a bone. I'm not going to hold that against the team moving forward, but I totally understand if someone else will.
Yeah, I'm still not 100% sure what to make of it. I think at the end of the day, it's not anything I really want to carry forward, but it'll be in the back of my head.
It's there.
If I see Yordan, Jeremy Pena, it's like, yeah, I'm going to click draft. No, I'm not. No, I can't. Yeah, okay. It's like
it seems like a reasonable tiebreaker. It's just I would guess Yordan's going to get dinged enough that it won't be a tiebreaker anymore. You know?
Yeah, I feel like if he drops in drafts, fine by me. I'll take a look. I'm not setting the minimum pick on him. I'm not bidding up in the auction for him.
That's
Somebody
reasonable.
else can do that. If he falls, then that's totally fine by me. Should I start Horton and Yuri versus the Mets and Kirby versus the Dodgers this week? I don't know about Kirby versus the Dodgers. Horton is on a Jeremy Lin run right now that is just unbelievable. It's like 4 earned runs in 10 starts or something. I feel like I'm starting him. Yuri is a bit of a dicey one. I think that's where there's a conversation. But I feel like Horton, you got to throw him in there.
I always struggle with like the hot hand discussions because I tend to just think you should bet on players pitching to their talent level, right? And the last 10 starts might represent a shift in talent level. It's usually just a good 10 starts, right? Water usually finds its level. But with Horton, we don't know what the true talent level is. We can look at the ERA estimators, and they suggest he's been arguably the luckiest pitcher in baseball this season.
Yes.
That'll happen when you have a sub 1 ERA for a 10-start stretch. Obviously, that's luck to a certain extent. I think he's good. I think you do have to start him. Yuri, I love. For 2026, I'm taking Yuri Perez over Cade Horton. The last time he faced the Mets, I don't think he got out of the first inning. So he's just been a little iffy enough. He's been searching for the right combination of breaking balls. He's been featuring the sweeper more lately. I think that's a good idea. But I think he's okay to sit against the Mets. And then Kirby, he has had good starts, including his most recent one. He has had good stretches this season. I still don't think he's been right. And the evidence for that for me is just his arm slot has dropped. I think he was like 37 degrees last year. Now it's down to like 29. And that has completely messed up his splitter. He's basically not throwing the splitter anymore. I'm going to guess this offseason that's going to be the focus, is finding that off-speed pitch, because he basically just hasn't had the splitter or the changeup, which he's worked in occasionally. Neither has been very good when he's thrown them. I would guess it's either going to be working to get that arm slot back up so he can get the angle on the splitter right, or just finding the right pitch to work from his new arm slot. The Mariners are very good at that. I have faith that they'll figure it out, but versus the Dodgers this week, I think that's pretty iffy. I would lean towards avoiding Kirby in this one.
Yeah, I think if it's a head-to-head matchup, the kind of cop-out answer for me would be see what's going on by the time Friday rolls around. You might be in a situation where your ERA is 7.42 and your WHIP is 1.78, and you might as well at that point, but you also might be hugging a 1.42 ERA and a 0.72 WHIP, and at that point, you may not want to take the chance on George Kirby. Guys, just want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. It's Monday. Week 3 is wrapping up with an exciting matchup between Detroit and Baltimore. So go check out the Hard Rock Bet Stats Hub. You can find live odds and bet right from the Hard Rock Bet app. If you haven't tried it yet, our first bet gets you a $150 bonus if you bet $5. And your bet wins. You not only get your winnings, but you get the bonus bets as well. Plus, tonight on Hard Rock Bet, you get the Monday night parlay boost for the game. Boost your parlay so it pays you extra in winnings. There's new promos every single day. If you're listening to this later, just open up the app and check out what you've got on any given day. Download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit today. Guys, let's talk about, I just wanted to highlight a couple of potential pitching streamers. Today is nothing. There are like 3 games today. Unless you want to stream Michael McGreevy, maybe you could get away with it in a deeper league, but today is not really a day for streaming. Just looking at Tuesday, there's a couple of interesting names, Chris. Hurston Waldrop, Ryan Weathers, David Peterson, Johan Oviedo. Any of these guys strike you as an appealing streamer for tomorrow?
I think Waldrop has earned the benefit of the doubt to be a little more than a streamer, but especially against a matchup like the Nationals. I know it's been a little up and down lately, but that splitter's awesome. The expanded arsenal has really helped him, throw strikes more consistently. I like a lot of what we've seen from Waldrop, and the matchup against the Nationals is very nice. So you take advantage of that one. The rest of them, I lean towards no. Peterson, I think, has really run out of steam, and that was one that, as it was happening, he had about a full year between like last June and July of this year where he had a sub-3 ERA. The peripherals didn't really back it up. The whip was still bad. I think it's all caught up to him. It wouldn't surprise me if David Peterson had a good start, but I would probably avoid him. So I guess Weathers would be my second favorite of this group, but I don't fully trust that one either. Philly, not a terrible matchup, but not a great one either. I don't think Weathers is fully stretched out. So Waldrop is clearly the top option. I will say Monday does have Justin Verlander, who at least on CBS is in the streaming range. I think he's like 60% rostered there. And he is a 2-star pitcher this week. He gets the Cardinals, and then I think it's the Rockies in San Francisco for the second one. So Justin Verlander, if he's available in your league, is in line to pitch well this week. I don't want to guarantee that he will because I don't fully buy him, but the matchups are certainly there for him.
I mentioned this on a show last week that somebody maybe a month ago said to me, Justin Verlander, a viable pickup, and I literally answered with, come on. It's like I was just, at that point, things were looking so grim. The last 5 starts for Verlander, he's thrown 31 innings, 0.87 ERA. He's allowed 3 earned runs over 31 innings, 28 strikeouts, 12 walks is maybe a shade high, but who cares? 3 earned runs in 31 innings with a couple of wins for Verlander. Is this kind of like a bit of a dead cat bounce type of deal where it's like a last little run for Verlander of productivity before he's toast? Or could he maybe still be a viable pitcher even in the next year? Because he said he wants to pitch again next year. The stuff still grades out well. Are we going to be investing in Verlander at age 43 next year?
I think returning to San Francisco would be a very smart move for him because I think that's certainly helped. Because what he is now is basically an average strikeout guy who does have to rely on balls in play, but that is the one thing late in his career that has stayed pretty intact for Justin Verlander is the ability to limit damage on contact. And then playing in San Francisco, one of the toughest pitch hitting parks in baseball, I think certainly helps him in that regard as well. So I would hope if he does come back, San Francisco will be the spot because I think that's the best spot for him to remain viable. But looking ahead to 2026, I think maybe a late round flyer, but you probably can find someone a little more interesting. But in a week when he gets the Cardinals, who have been the worst offense in the second half, and gets the Rockies on the road, who are just an absolute disaster, you'll take that streamer for sure.
It's been fun to see. It reminds me of old Verlander. Not that he is necessarily old Verlander. Like you said, he's pitching a lot differently than he used to. He's a 20% strikeout rate, but it's been a lot of fun over the last few weeks. My apologies to the guy I told not to pick him up. I was dead wrong there. I could not have seen this one coming, but Justin Verlander has been looking fantastic. Just a couple of streamers on Wednesday I think are probably worth it. Stephen Kolek versus the Angels. He's been fantastic, really, for the last 6 weeks or so. Jonah Tong against the Cubs might be a little scary on the surface with what the ERA looks like after that blow up against Texas, but bounced back in his last start. He gets the Cubs, who have not been firing on all cylinders. I feel like Jonah Tong is also a pretty sneaky streamer. If people are just looking at surface stats, I feel like he's a decent option this week, Chris.
Yeah, the Cubs have been weirdly not a very good offense in the second half of the season. They're 21st in WOBA since the All-Star break. I think he's fine. I've been certainly disappointed by Jonah Tong's performance in the majors. I think part of it is probably that delivery is going to be, I think, a high variance thing for him, where if he's not quite on, it's going to be really tough. The fastball hasn't missed as many bats as I would have expected, given the arm angle and the funkiness of it, but I still have a lot of faith in him long term. So I don't think it's a bad idea to bet on the talent there. He's certainly, you're comparing him to Stephen Kolek. Well, I certainly think Jonah Tong's the more talented pitcher.
Yes.
So, better matchup for Kolek. The Angels have been, it seems like everybody's got 9 strikeouts against the Angels over the past couple of weeks. And it's been weird. Like, it's just everybody's just throwing their four-seamer and the Angels just can't hit it. They have the highest whiff rate in baseball on four-seamers in the month of September. It's like something like a 31% mark, which would be a crazy mark for that. That's like Luis Castillo at his best used to run 30% whiff rates on his four-seamer, and he was like the only starter. And now everyone's doing that against the Angels. So it's not a bad spot to be streaming against for sure.
I just don't understand what's going on in the chat here with all this talk about Blue Sky. It's another social media platform, guys. It's really not a big deal. I promise you. I promise you it's not big deal.
It's just narcissists yelling at each other on one website versus another. That's all it is.
That's all it is. It's just a different crowd. If you don't like it, change the channel. Let's take a couple of questions before I send you guys on your way here. I don't want to keep Chris all day, although I could talk to him all day. I don't want to make this a 2-hour podcast. So if there's any questions we don't get to, please reach out in the DMs. I know this is crunch time. I'll be more than happy to answer them. What you're saying is we may or may not have Joey P on. No. Pizza Pia will be here on Friday. Unless he changes his mind or something, Pizza Pia will be here. I'll try and make sure of it myself. Is having pitchers that pitch in Cincy almost as bad as Coors Field? Yes, it's just about equally as bad. Not in terms of, like, the park factors vary a little bit, but they are probably the 2 worst parks you can throw your pitchers out, maybe with Fenway in there as
Sacramento.
Well. Sacramento. I forgot about Sacramento. Yes.
Sacramento is not far from Coors Field. That park has been crazy. That's one that, we don't have you typically want to look at 3-year rolling averages for park factors because there's a lot of noise, but that really looks like it's, even more so than Cincinnati, one of the worst parks in baseball for pitchers. That's one that you've got to be really, really good for me to trust you, especially in a day game when it's hot. The ball is just carrying like crazy there.
Yeah, if I turn off the rolling factors, where does it come in? Does it
second.
Register? Is it second? Yeah. Okay. My thing is taking a while to load. That is wild. Yeah. I think honestly, and even Tampa as well is another park where you got to be very careful. Now, these won't be forever. Like, I think Tampa's going back to the Trop next year. Sacramento probably has at least one more year.
I think it's at least 2. Yeah, they've barely started construction there. Yeah. And I'm still not sure they're ever going to move. Yeah.
I'm not surprised. I'm still sad they're not in Oakland anymore. And I've referred to them on this show and others this year as the Oakland Athletics, I think probably 12 or 15 times at least. Interesting question here. First of all, Matt says, a pleasure to see Towers in the daytime. Absolutely.
Hey.
Is Garrett Cole worth a keeper in round 20 for next year? I haven't seen an update on Garrett Cole in forever. I don't know, honestly. I feel like, probably in the 20th round. Like, what the hell else are you finding in the 20th round? You're cutting a lot of those guys anyway. The upside of Garrett Cole is probably worth it, but I don't know if you've seen anything about his recovery, Chris.
I have not seen. He had the surgery in March, and so you assume. I would guess we're going to see him on the mound in spring training, but probably not cleared to return to the majors until, I would guess it'll be like May. When you're talking about veterans, I think you can shorten the timeline a little bit. If it's some 22-year-old, I think you look at 15 months. But a veteran like Garrett Cole, 14 months should probably be the average, and you would guess some guys come in under that average. So I think we'll see him by June at the worst. As we've seen with Sandy Alcantara and Spencer Strider and a couple other guys this season, you can't just expect everyone who comes back from Tommy John surgery to look like themselves immediately. There will be an adjustment period, but he has started a throwing program. Looks like there was an update in August that he's begun throwing. So I think a 20th round, even acknowledging maybe he misses a month, maybe he's not Garrett Cole right away. I think even then, 20th round is probably still worth the flyer there, just because you're probably dropping whoever you draft in the 20th round pretty quickly anyway, right? Like those are low probability bets anyway.
Yeah, you're taking flyers, right? You're taking flyers, and even if Cole looks 75% of what he used to look like in the 20th round, you'll take that all day, no problem in the 20th round. Good question though, Matt. I think it's interesting because Garrett Cole is somebody that we haven't really talked about a lot this year because there hasn't been any reason to talk about Garrett Cole this year. Appreciate all the guests. Thanks to Orrico, Joey P, and the Welsh took home the chip for the second year in a row. Congrats, Patrick. Fantasy baseball is the hardest fantasy sport there is. We're predominantly a fantasy football company here at FantasyPros, but I'll be the baseball guy. I'll say it. Fantasy baseball is a lot harder and it's a lot longer. So congratulations, everybody who was able to take home a chip and everybody who will by the end of this week. We're here to help you guys out. I think that will wrap it up for us because I don't want to keep Chris all day here, but really appreciate you coming on, man. Just let the people know where they can keep up with your work throughout the offseason and heading into 2026 as well.
Yeah, all stuff at cbssports.com. My primary stuff now is the CBS Sports Fantasy Baseball Today newsletter, cbssports.com/newsletter to subscribe. That is 5 days a week during the season, but even in the off season, it's going to be at least once a week. I get itchy, I get antsy if I'm not working, so it'll probably be twice a week, more often than not. Fantasy Baseball Today podcast will be 3 times a week, I think, throughout the off season. We're trying to do a live one from First Pitch Arizona as well. Frank Sample and I are going to be there. Looking forward to that, and just all things CBS Sports Fantasy Baseball.
All things fantasy sports, all things fantasy baseball in particular. That is right. That is the king of all fantasy sports. I said it. That's right. Don't tell my bosses. Don't tell them bosses. I said that. But guys, that will do it for us for today. For Joe Orrico, for Chris Towers, I am Joe Orrico. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Fantasy Pros Baseball Podcast. Take care, everybody. Guys, send some DMs. There's a lot of questions. If you want them answered, I'll be happy to answer them in the DMs.